welcome to the Stage Door Show. Tonight, my guest is a terrific recording artist and songwriter that has everything you need to be a success in this business. He has new music that is rising on the charts, and I'm excited to talk to him about his process because he does things the right way. So please welcome Michael Gilas to the show. Thanks, Mike, for being with us.
Thank you. I got to tell you, thanks, Dave, for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
Well, you know, and I said you do things the right way, and I really mean that because, you know, just looking at anybody who looks at your videos and anybody who looks at your website, listens to your music and the production quality can show the hard work that you put into your craft. And, you know, so talk about that. And because I think that part of the deal is, you know, in this business, you have to make things look good and sound good. So, you know, talk about the work that you put into making yourself really kind of stand out from the rest.
Well, it's been a process, you know, of trying to figure it out, you know, from the very beginning of how we were going to do it, you know, to try to, you know, I hate to use the word commercial. You know, there's an irony to it. You have to have a certain amount of commercial sound for people to listen to you, but you don't want to be so commercial that you're, you know, so commercial, you know. So it took me a little while to sort of figure out how I wanted to do it. But from the very beginning, the sound kind of was somewhat retro, but sounding fresh with background singing and sort of an R&B sort of groove with a little bit of rock in it. It was kind of a mixture of everything. I sort of had that in my head. And I think to anybody sort of starting out, I think you got to have the sound in your head. You got to kind of know. You got to kind of know what you want. Although, of course, producers will tell you, yeah, you should sound like this and sound like that. But I think you have to sort of know what you want. And once you kind of know what you want, then you sort of have to craft things around that.
I got to tell you, you know, You and Me in Miami is a song. It's already got over 600,000 views on YouTube. And, you know, I love the vibe, not only with the video, but the song and, you know, and working with the rain. I mean, that started out at 21, number 21 on the Billboard charts. It ended up in 13. But, you know, one of the things I noticed too, Michael, about your music is, you know, I know you chart a lot in the contemporary music genre, but I really see kind of a rock vibe there as well. So, and it's nice because every song's unique. You know, it's not the same sound. You really kind of mix it up. So talk about your ability to really mix up, you know, each song to make it unique.
Yeah, Dave, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. It's intentional to make the songs different. I mean, you know, you go back to albums that have been classics over the years. The sound was always, every song was a bit different. I wanted a different sound. I didn't want every song to sound exactly the same. I had different producers. Kent Wells, who's Dolly Parton's producer. He's produced Steven Tyler. He's produced Reba McEntire. Produced some tons and tons of big artists. He produced that first song, Working with the Rain. And I thought it was perfect for him. We went to Nashville. I was introduced to him. It was great. And then the second song, Can't Hide Beautiful, which charted also, I think we hit 19 on that. We did that with Michael Garvin, who produced Jennifer Lopez and Alan Phillips here in San Diego. So it's kind of was a producer thing. And then You Me in Miami, we did that with Brian Kennedy up in LA, who's produced Rihanna and Chris Brown, those names, and Justin Timberlake.
And Michael Gilas.
And Michael Gilas. Yeah, thank God, Michael Gilas.
There you go.
To that too. So it was a combination of trying to pick different producers to give me a different sound. And this Miami was kind of a song, you know, I mean, to reaching out to songwriters out there. I've said this before, I kind of have two lives. One that I kind of live my real life, which is more working with the rain kind of thing. Yeah. And this sort of a life that I wish I had. You know, I actually went to Miami. I was trapped in a rainstorm. I'm sure you know, you've been there before. The rain's right? Yeah. And I stuck and I stayed overnight in a hotel and I went home. But then I had this fantasy, gee, wouldn't it have been nice if I had met this person and met this woman? We had a romantic day and evening together, and then I went home. And that the song was kind of that. It was kind of a song about romance, finding love. The city of Miami sees this romantic evening and day between these two people. And I sort of narrated my own story.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Kind of a process of finding the right guy to make that sound that I wanted.
You know, and you know, I was just going to say, you know, some of those producers you mentioned, I've interviewed other artists that have worked with those same producers, and talk about finding those producers. And as an artist, you know, that might be out there kind of, you know, struggling a bit, or somebody who's, you know, really kind of not really knowing their way.
Mm.
How do you even contact a producer like that? What's your process of even getting somebody like that to take your project on? Because they don't take every project on.
No, you're right. And they're pretty selective, these guys, because they're so busy all the time. In the case going back to Kent Wells, I knew someone who was a guitar player, and coming back to somebody said, "Well, I don't know that person." I think the way to do it is you keep networking yourself. When you sort of get into this business, you go to studios, be a nice person, go there with a cup in your hand, so to speak. Always be pleasant, respectful. Musicians have a great way of helping one another. I have found that in the industry. It's a very business where people will lead you on to another person, and if
Right.
you can do that,
Right.
you will eventually get to a Kent Wells.
Yeah. Right.
You'll meet this guy who meets this guy, and ask around, and then you will finally get to Kent or Brian Kennedy or even Alan Phillips or Michael Garvin, these kind of people, and you'll get to them. And just by networking yourself constantly and being a real genuine person,
Yeah.
I know that sounds so, well, it's so ambiguous, but it's not. If you can continue to sort of network yourself and push the envelope a little, go to some of these events too.
Yeah, it's about networking and building relationships. And it's one of the things that we like to say here on the show is one of the most important things you could do, not just in in the music business, but just in general, in any kind of business or any field or any just in life in general, building relationships. There's nothing more important than that. And especially in the music business, because it's a small world. And I know you said, it's people like to help each other, and that's true. However, there's also competition out there,
Sure.
and now especially when you have the streaming platforms that everybody has access to, and and it's an even playing field now more than ever. So as a musician, you even have to make yourself stand out even more. And when I went out to your website, michaelgilas.com, so everybody go to michaelgilas.com. Very well done website. Everything is just crisp, clear, high definition. Everything's just really amazing. But what I like about it is, even on YouTube, is that you put yourself out there. You basically, there's a video where you kind of interviewed yourself or was talking to a camera, and you're telling your story a little bit. And I was like, that's cool. Not enough people do stuff like that. And what I like about that is you're marketing yourself, but you're marketing who you are. You're not trying to be somebody you're not. You're very genuine. I could tell on the video. So is that something that you're doing consciously to make sure that you get out there, but people know who you are as a person as opposed to just a singer?
Well, I'm not any different here with you than I am, in the studio or with friends. I think you have to be a genuine person. You can't, I hate to say the word phony.
Right.
The guy you saw in the video, that's who I am,
Right.
and
Right.
the guy that's here isn't any different than the guy they were interviewing. And just coming back to when people say, well, how do I get started? There's also a networking of trying to co-write with other people. There's a lot of great songwriters out there who also are connected. And I co-write with a guy named Bill DeLuigi as well. He's a great songwriter. Helps me kind of figure things out. And I write a little bit with Alan Phillips too. But I think that's another thing, to kind of latch on to people who are in the industry that are top songwriters. And
Right.
and they are available, for you to obviously, you have to pay them, obviously, but you can get there. But coming back to that realness, you have to pitch that idea, not pitch that idea. It's more or less, you have to say, kind of tell people that you are a real person. Well, I think people see through the phoniness.
Yeah. In the world right now with Instagram and,
Yeah.
everybody's smiling for the picture, and then they're done, and then they got the frown back on their face. And I see this too much, and it's like, come on, just be yourself. There's nothing wrong. If you're having a bad day, have a bad day. If you're having a good day, let everybody know about it, but just be yourself. And that's one thing though you said, and this is what I want to ask you about this, because I'm sure there's a story behind this, but it says, you quoted, music gave me a second chance at life. Every song I write is part of that story. Tell us about that. How did that quote come from?
Came from about 2021. I fell off a horse. I broke my neck.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was very, very serious. And I, was centimeter either way from being paralyzed or dead, and I had an operation. I came out of that operation pretty brutal. you start taking those pills. Yeah, I mean, sure,
Yeah,
you've heard of the stories right now.
for
It's pretty
sure.
hooked pretty fast. I
Yeah.
basically threw the pills away. But in the process, I had music. I could still write songs kind of, and I wrote them in my head, and I could barely play the guitar because I'd broken my wrist as well.
Yeah.
I almost had to relearn how to play. And that music saved me, because I don't think if I didn't have music, I don't know. I don't know if I would have had the will or the desire to go on. I was that much in a hole. I mean, physically and mentally. From the person I was. I mean, it's hard to believe that. If you had seen me in 2021, and then now this guy's on the Billboard chart. It was quite a metamorphosis, a transformation of someone. But that's a whole. We could certainly talk about that. How I sort of pulled myself out of the hole. But music saved me.
And speaking of that, because I think sometimes traumatic experiences have a way of almost, creating a person that like you said, you're creative, you're writing music, but you had to relearn how to do it. Do you think, in some weird way, that it helped you even become more successful because of having to work that much harder to, what I mean? In a weird way, does that kind of make sense, where you had to work even that much harder than most people do?
I had to work very hard at rebuilding myself, and
Yeah.
in every way. So I think that helped me as an artist and as a songwriter sort of become more introspective, maybe even appreciate life more than I had to that point. I'm sure, if I could say this, there's a lot of people out there who are probably going through trauma. Maybe they're drinking, maybe they are drugs, maybe they're pills, whatever, and they're trying to kick this, or they've got a habit or whatever. There's a lot of people out there. What happened to me was I had to make the energy of decision was greater than my addiction, so to speak,
Sure.
to make a change. You know what I mean? Because I really wanted music more than I wanted those other things, and I wanted to live.
Yeah.
And I think if people push on and use that trauma, whatever they, as a way of making themselves creative, I think you'll rise above. That's kind of what happened to me.
Yeah. I mean, well, thank God.
Yeah.
You're so talented, and we talked about this before we recorded, but you grew up on the Long Island, in the New York area, and people like Billy Joel and some of the people that came out of Long Island. I mean, I don't know if he was an influence of yours, but who influenced you in your music when you were growing up?
Well, yeah, certainly Billy Joel, all those kind of people like that. He was a New York guy. I think the Eagles had a big influence. I also love that Motowny kind of groove. You know what I mean? I think it's been a lot of things. I listen to a lot of today's music, believe it or not. I'm influenced by a lot of people like Teddy Swims. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Because I'm on the charts myself, so I'm very aware of what they're doing. I believe it or not, I listen to a lot less music from the 80s and 90s than I used to, only because I need to stay current to what's kind of going on. But I do. I mean, I like that music a lot. I like a lot of music. I mean, I
Yeah.
like Frank Sinatra. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, really, quite frankly.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
Come on, there's all kinds of music. I like Tony Bennett. I like Lady Gaga. So there's a lot of great music out there. And I'm not one of those people that says the greatest music was in the 80s and 90s or whenever. Yeah, I think there's some great music today.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of music today, how do you write your music? I mean, how does that come to you? I guess, 'cause some people have a different process when they write music. I know you said you have some songwriting partners, but how does that initial idea come to you? Does it come from a past event, come to something you see in the streets? Is it something that, comes to you in a dream and you have to get up and write it down? How do you come up with the ideas for your music?
It comes in different ways all the time. Sometimes I'm dwelling on something, maybe a relationship or a past relationship that might, like other people probably do. What happened, what didn't happen, what I should have done, could have done, would have done, those kind of things. I'm sure people go through those, or just in general, what's going on in my own life, or what I'd like to happen. Those kind of things. It's something that's usually something that's been on my mind for a while, and then I kind of put it to paper, so to speak, and start fiddling. I'm kind of a fiddler, kind of a noodler, and then I kind of noodle around and get something, and then I kind of go from there. The songwriting process is not, it starts out with an idea, and then it's sort of a homework project.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You kind of fill in and figure it out. You know, it's a very hard process to kind of describe. It's sort of like if I said the sign that says Philadelphia, well, it's not really Philadelphia, but it's the way to Philadelphia, right?
Right.
It's kind of the same idea. Well, songwriting, what is? It's kind of this, but well, it's sort of that. But you see what I mean? It's being creative. It's hard to describe what creativity is.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to give yourself. I'm going to talk. I was talking to Chris Barron about this from Spin Doctors, where, you know, he allows the voice in his head to be free with, you know, his ideas, and you know, he gives himself that kind of ability to screw things up, you know, just to be free with it, you know, and not have that editing part of his brain say, okay, that ain't gonna work. But he, you know, so again, like you just said, you know, it's like it's hard to explain, but sometimes creativity is like it brings you a certain direction, but to get there might be different roads, you know, but you don't know what road you're going to take until it comes and, you know, into your brain, I guess, you know, to be creative like that. But, you know, whatever you're doing is working. Obviously the music is fantastic. And, you know, again, I just want everybody to go to michaelgilas.com, and the last name is spelled Gilas. So just make sure Michael Gilas, Gilas.com. And, you know, I also want to ask you some advice for some of our artists that are out there listening right now, whether it doesn't matter what they do, genre wise, but, you know, what kind of advice from your own experience in your past that you can give somebody that's just starting out or that has no clue how to get to where they need to go. But I mean, what's the biggest piece of advice you would have for somebody out there?
Well, you know, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, you know, and I probably say one of the biggest mistakes I had was you get sucked into what you want instead of what you should be doing. For example, I started to get sucked into, well, this person knows this person and this person knows this person, and you start wasting a lot of time and effort and money, and it's very dangerous. I think you have to realize who you are, what you want, and go for that. I know that's, you know, not the easiest thing to do, but I think you have to believe in yourself a lot. And I started to think, well, you know, maybe that person knows more than I do, and maybe I don't know that. I can't. Maybe I should listen to this. And before you know, you get 12 people telling you what to do, and you're spinning your wheels. For the first year, I think that happened to me. I kept listening to someone. No, don't do that. No, you should do that. No, you should do that. And I wasn't really just listening to myself.
Right.
And I think you have, like, even your show here, I'm sure you get 20 people tell you, oh, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. Right? I'm sure, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right. It's the same for me. You know, well, and you get a call from this guy, you know, and if you had a dime for everybody that told you they were going to make you rich, you know, you'd have your own island kind of thing, right?
For sure.
So, you know, so it's the same for me. I think if I was going to say to somebody, know the direction you want to go and stay that direction, stay the course, stay in the boat, so to speak, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a great, you know, that's like stay the course. Don't, you know, and one of the things you were right on the money, where people are like, you know, you should have, you know, more videos, more this, more that. And I'm like, look, you know, I'm on 300 episodes. I wouldn't have got to 300 episodes if I didn't, you know, if I did something, you know, terribly wrong. So, you know, so I did listen to myself, and I just stayed the course. And again, same with you and, you know, and everybody else that's successful, you know, it's like listening to other people. Then you got to listen, you know, look to see where those other people are. Are they in the business? Are they doing what you're doing right now? Are they successful? Well, you know, I listen to people who are more successful than me, you know, and the people that have, you know, gotten to where I want to be, those are who I listen to, because they're the ones who actually make it. But again, you know, that's well said. The other thing is, you know, venues. I know you've probably played many venues, out there, but is there one in particular that you say, hey, you know, I wish I could play there, or at some point, you know, I'd be blessed to play at that place? Where would that be?
Well, I'd always like to go back and play on Long Island somewhere. You know, that was home, you know, something like that. I think eventually, like, we're going to be on tour sometime in February. Not sure where the tour is going to start.
Sure.
But, you know, always, you know, coming back home, so to speak, coming back home. Oh, and here in LA, here in San Diego, the Belly Up, places like that. are certainly going to happen. But I like when people ask me about live shows. Live shows are great. I love the studio because you can be a mad scientist. The live show, you never know how your voice is going to be. You know, if you're not feeling great, you got to go on. You know, it's a one take kind of a thing. You know, it's like, okay, kid, now, you know what I mean? Kind of a thing. You know, the studio's a lot of a different story. You get to make a mistake until you get to experiment. But I like both. And I like interacting with people, you know, so that's always a cool thing. You know, I'm sure like yourself, when you actually meet people who listen, that's pretty great, you know?
Absolutely. It's very gratifying. You know, and before we're done here, I just want to know when it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be, Michael? What do you want to leave behind when it's all, let's say, at the end of the road?
When it's all said and done, I hope people take away with, you know, if that guy did it, I could do it too. You know, I mean, like I said, I've been through hell, you know, with the neck and the whole thing. And if someone says, you know what, he's a poster child, he did it, I can do it too, I'd be happy.
Well, that's well said. So what can people get excited about? Tell people what they can go on, what they're gonna hear, and what they can download right now.
Well, You, Me, Miami's the new single. I have to, you know, if I can chest pound here, it's number 24 right now on the adult contemporary chart. I think we're 42 right now on the hot adult contemporary chart, a hot AC chart, which is, you know, against the biggest names in the world. I am an independent artist. You know, that's no easy feat.
Right.
So this is my third single. So that would be nice if people listen to that in the video. Of course, I'd be forever grateful. But like I always come back and say, I hope people come away with something. I mean, the world's a tough place. You know it, right? Things ain't getting easier, as they say.
That's right. Everyone's
got their thing. I just hope people come together. Music is the one thing that brings people together. And that's really, end of the day, what I hope.
That's amazing. Well, thanks, Michael. MichaelGilas.com. Everybody go check it out. Or Google Michael. If you Google Michael, you'll see all kinds of great stuff. You know, is YouTube. You have a lot of great followers on there, and you know, and I'm a new subscriber myself. So great stuff out there, Michael, and just best of continued luck to you. You know, with your music, and you know, obviously great stuff out there. So again, thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Best of luck to you guys too.